Solution Talk, toward global alignment, harmonizing sustainable finance taxonomies across borders. Please welcome onto the stage Rong Zhang from the IFC, Sustainable Banking and Finance Network.
Let's get started. Guten Tag. Good afternoon, everyone, in person in the room and online. Thank you very much for joining this important discussion on focusing alignment of sustainable finance taxonomies. And this session is co-organized by the German Agency for International Cooperation, GIZ, and International Finance Corporation, IFC, part of the World Bank Group, as well as the IFC-supported Sustainable Banking and Finance Network, which brings 100 financial regulator and the banking association from emerging markets. My name is Rong Zhang. I lead IFC's ESG networks and thought leadership, and also serves as the global coordinator for SBFN. I'm very honored today to moderate this panel with distinguished speakers who are on the forefront to promote the alignment of sustainable finance taxonomies. So let me briefly introduce them, starting with the ladies. Ms. Ingrid-Gabriela Hoven, Managing Director and member of the Management Board of GIZ. Thank you very much, Ingrid.
Pleasure to be here.
And you know, we just yesterday signed our second MOU, IFC and GIZ, to accelerate our partnership to promote sustainable finance. I say Michael is the audience. We have working together for a long time. So thank you very much from the management support for the partnership.
Absolutely.
And Cristina Reis, Undersecretary for Sustainable Economic Development at Brazil's Ministry of Finance. And Cristina, thank you so much. You traveled a long way from Brazil to come here amid of your many responsibilities, including the crucial preparation of COP30. I was very inspired by your remark yesterday talking about COP29 to COP30 and that very important message you're sending to coherence of policy of sustainable finance, including taxonomy, is very important to facilitate the financing gap for climate action and SDGs.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Sean Kidney, Mr. Sean Kidney, CEO of Climate Bond Initiative, CBI. Sean and I shared many panels and platforms over the years to promote sustainable finance in the emerging market, including the launch of the very first taxonomy 13 years ago. And Mr. Peter Pontuch, and Deputy Head of the Sustainable Finance Policy Unit at the DG for International Partnership of European Commission. And thank you so much for coming here to share the EU's role to promote sustainable finance taxonomy worldwide. It's not across the EU and beyond the EU.
Thank you.
So before I turn into our panelists, I just want to have a briefly framing of the discussion with two key messages. First is recognizing the importance and urgency of the interoperability of sustainable finance taxonomy, not only the development, but also implementation. With over 70 taxonomies worldwide, both launched and in development, we're facing growing challenges. Fragmentation, inconsistency, and also limited interoperability, all of which will threaten to hinder the progress of sustainable finance. So today's panel will explore opportunities, good practices to tackle those challenges. Second message, highlighting the solutions. We're in the solution talk room. So we'll talk about solutions through the global partnership. In fact, this panel reflects the actual alliance already together, working together on this objective. It builds on the work of the roadmap for advancing sustainability taxonomies launched during the COP29. It was an initiative by joint efforts of Central Bank of Azerbaijan as the presidency of COP29, and IFC, SBFN, IPSF, and UNDP. And that partnership has expanded so quickly, now including 12 global institutions and focusing on this task, including Ministry of Finance, now presidency of COP30, CBI, GIZ, EU, alongside World Bank, UNEP-FI, and UNPRI. So this growing growing collaboration, really with the aim to connect the dots, both on COP29 and COP30, but also many initiatives and around this topic. So with that context, so let's begin our discussion. I know even before this panel, we already started the conversation with people have questions and passion in this topic. So really our objective is connect past, now, and the future. So our first round is about past and now. So let me first start with Sean. Giving CBIs in significant involvement in the taxonomy development and implementation worldwide. Sean, can you share some insights and experience of the taxonomy interoperability, both the current trend and also the opportunities? Sean, the floor is yours.
Look, let's understand what we're doing here first, right? The urgency is not taxonomy rollout, the urgency is climate change and all the other development issues. The problem set is we're at 1.5 degrees this year. So climate is trending in an extremely bad way. We've got to move faster, faster, faster if we are to successfully reduce emissions. That requires clarity. That requires making it simple to act. One of the things that we have wrestled with for the last 30 years is constant arguments about what is a climate investment. You know, the number of times I've had arguments of people in the pre-taxonomy, solar, but if it's solar, you're getting energy from a coal-fired power station, create the solar cells. That's bad, isn't it? Or the dissembling by the fossil fuel industry to say electric cars, actually they take coal power, they're really bad, etc. Taxonomy is a way of sorting that out and providing a simple guidance, a shopping list for the future, bring in experts up front to work out these things and to say to the world, you want to know what to do? Here it is, we've worked it out, and you will see that in the Brazilian taxonomy that's coming out soon, which is a list for Brazil for what needs to happen around climate. But when I say climate, I don't just mean reducing emissions, because getting emissions down is the most urgent task, but we have got 1.5 degrees, we've got impact. More people will die this year of heat than ever before in human history because of the impact of climate change. It started. So we need resilience. And what does resilience mean? It means heat-resistant buildings, but it means social resilience. Stronger societies survive crazy weather volatility better. Stronger nature, etc. And that's the biggest trend in taxonomy development since we started. In the Brazilian taxonomy, there's extensive discussion about social and resilience as well as mitigation. I say that because Brazilian is one of the latest taxonomies coming off the mark and so on, but there are many around the world. So what we're trying to do is to make it easier for the world to act, especially finance, in the face of the challenges, the extraordinary species-defying challenges that we face. If we don't act quickly, we fail. And taxonomies are working wonderfully to provide guidance. The number of times I work with a bank in Slovakia or an investor in Thailand who now understands, oh, right, that qualifies. It doesn't mean they will necessarily do it, because that still requires finances, incentives, government support, all that sort of stuff. But at least they understand what to do, and we get past the arguments which has been used by opponents of change to slow everything down. And that's the beauty of it, and that's what we've seen happening. And so I'm incredibly excited about that. This year, 70 taxonomies in play, as you say, led by China and the European Union, and collaboration between China, the European Union, Singapore, and now Brazil in global harmonization and, of course, interoperability program. It just makes life easier. This is where citizens in places like Panama or in South Africa will benefit, because capital can now move more quickly. Is it perfect? No. It's not going to deal with the detail, but it's enough guidance to get things moving. We don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. This is about establishing good direction and getting momentum going. Of course, we do need governments as well. That's why it's really good to have representatives of the European Commission and Brazil and Germany at this particular table.
Fantastic. We feel your passion and also the urgency. And Sean, I think you bring out a very important point that we talk so much about taxonomy, but what's for? So taxonomy is only a means to end. The end is facilitate the needed financing for the climate action and also SDGs. And you call for action, also Cristina. So I will move to Cristina. And Cristina, you have many tasks in your hand as Minister of Finance, leading a number of tasks. One is developing the national taxonomies. So my question, the first question is really, how do you look at it and do it, align the global, the national context with good global good practice? But I remember in the BRICS discussion, you also look at the regional. Regional, so you look at the three dimensions, national, regional, global. How do you balance that? But also you have a big task, global task, to be the presidency of COP30. How does taxonomy fit into the COP30's priority? We talk about this is only a means to the end. Cristina.
So thank you, Ron. It's very nice to be here with you. It's an honor to me. And we are very aligned. We all has this passion, and we all, I think, love taxonomies. We are in the same colors, by the way. It's a coincidence. Blue and orange, I don't know why we came in the same colors. But the thing is that the Brazilian COP presidency is putting the taxonomy as a priority. It is one of the key instruments of the Ministry of Finance's scope for COP, because this is a way to promote sustainable development, to prevent greenwashing, or better saying, to guarantee a financial flow, information flow that is credible, transparent, and has integrity. So it's very important, this aspect of the taxonomy as well. And it comes, as Peter was saying, not only for targeting environmental and climate objectives, but also social and economic ones. So for developing countries, for Brazil in special, we have like key structural challenges. And they are not only about finding this transition to fight climate emergency, it's also about dignity, human rights, and having decent jobs for everybody, and reducing inequalities, which are huge in our country. So, and when I talk about inequalities, I mean also gender, race, regional inequalities, as I was saying in a panel in the morning. So that's why the Brazilian COP presidency wants to foster taxonomy. And in my view, it should be negotiated under Article 2.1c as a tool to guarantee this comparison. It's not to put every taxonomy in the same page or to copy and paste thresholds or criteria. No, it's just to show to the investor, to the stakeholders, how those taxonomies the interoperability among them.
Yes.
That's why we don't use the word interoperability. We are calling this as super taxonomy, but it's just a way to diminish the saying. So we need to build this clarification. It's a matter of a methodology. We just need to show how they interact, both in national, because there are many taxonomies inside the country.
Yeah.
In Brazil, there are many. The financial one, the National Development Bank one, there are many. So in national, regional, and also global levels.
Fantastic. I think Cristina also emphasized what also Sean brought out. One is really is financing. It's not only financial flow, but impact on the ground for people, for the planet. And I think it's important to emphasize on the social side. I think even before our panel already, we have audience passionate to talk about. I think this is, with the 70 taxonomies, all of them cover climate and also green. Very few touch on social, and maybe just on gender and one aspect, but you just cover the whole, I think the ecosystem that you need to cover, that's so important. I think that's also a trend. We see the kind of expanded themes of our taxonomy. You mentioned the themes in terms of mitigation and resilience, and you mentioned on the kind of social, we also say blue biodiversity. So I think we're coming to the evolvement, really become more sophisticated, but of course come with the challenge and also the usage of those taxonomies. Great, thank you so much. Sean also called action of EU. So now I naturally go to Peter yourself. And as EU is the early creators of sustainable finance taxonomies, so I think it's more reflection. My first question is reflection. How has the EU taxonomy informed global development? And then it's also about your unit's role. So it's not only for EU taxonomy use in EU, but actually EU is playing a role to help the emerging market develop taxonomy, but implementation, building capacity. That's a little bit untold story. So Peter, can you share with us your insights on those?
Sure. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to the organizers and to the host of the conference. So indeed, a couple of years back, the EU launched its sustainable taxonomy, and it was a turning point for the EU. And we also think it was a turning point for our international partners. These frameworks are a crucial element so that we can mobilize private capital towards sustainability projects. And this is even more urgent as we now see that the funding gap to reach sustainable development goals has achieved levels that are really incredibly high, unimaginable. We talk about trillions. It's also a key element to reach our commitments under the Paris Agreement, and somehow the topic is also this year in 2025 very prominent in the context of the discussions of the Financing for Development International Conference that will take place later this month. So, as Sean and also Rong rightly mentioned, we see now a lot of activity in the area of taxonomies. 70 is a huge number, and it's excellent. And we are very happy that this trend is continuing. This also brings some kind of a challenge because the taxonomy is a kind of a language. How we define sustainability in a given jurisdiction, and so we need to somehow make these languages speak to each other. So the priority for us now, when we talk to our international partners, is to really enhance interoperability. And so the EU, what we are doing now is we are trying to put, let's say, our expertise or experience from the EU side to, let's say, benefit all our international partners. And so we are putting into place a technical assistance hub, a kind of a one-stop shop, which is called the Sustainable Finance Advisory Hub, which is jointly funded by the EU and by our German colleagues who are also in the room today. And basically, the idea is to have, as I said, a one-stop shop providing high-quality technical assistance in the area of sustainable finance, and in particular in the area of development of taxonomies. Now, the idea is to really tailor the support to the needs of the individual countries, reflect their situations, but at the same time also take into account international best practices and the EU's experience, which we are very happy to share. And so the idea is really to somehow boost the confidence of investors by bringing clarity and somehow transparency on what we call sustainable around the world. And interoperability has been really a compass of everything that we do as EU when it comes to working with our partners around the globe. We are trying to really, on the concrete projects we are working on, we are investing a lot of efforts into doing comparison studies, so comparing taxonomies between jurisdictions, showing similarities and differences between them. And so we have published a number of comparisons between the South African in the EU and the EU taxonomy, same for Colombia, most recently for Mexico. And now we are also moving to let's say, another level, if I may put it that way, with our GIZ colleagues, and I'm sure we will hear about this too very soon in this panel. We are putting in place what we call a global taxonomy mapper, which will be an online tool that will help even further to kind of for users, so be it investors or policymakers or academics, to kind of compare and see how different taxonomies are drafted. Interoperability also affects the way we work under the Sustainable Finance Advisory Hub. So we use common work principles, try to do consistently things and not to overlap, not to double the work that different partners of the hub are doing in their engagements with the partner countries that we work with. Last and not least, we also try to have the kind of compass of interoperability brought to the international stage. So whenever we engage with our partners, we really think that this should be something that we all kind of consider as the main or one of the key working principles, and that's why also the whole work around the roadmap after COP, the previous COP, and in view of the next COP, we are very keen to see this project continuing. So this would be my take on it.
Great, that's a lot.
Thank you.
And Peter, thank you so much. I think that you addressed one of the challenges we see, the implementation of taxonomy. There's so many of them. And one of the challenges implementation is capacity. I was in a panel for launching the Thailand taxonomy last week. Very interesting. When they explained the taxonomy, the first slide said, taxonomy is not tax. So people, I think, this you talk about language actually in very important. And Cristina, you said interoperability. In the early days, I was struggling how to pronounce that. I think that's very important. Awareness, the knowledge, the tools, and also the capacity. We talk about 70. A lot of the in the emerging market is so encouraging. They're actually working on this channel, but we have to support them, not only have the taxonomy had to be used. So great work. And thank you so much. And also, I think Peter caught your action and the question about this secret or exciting taxonomy, global taxonomy mapper. Actually, Ms. Hoven, I want to ask you. But first is really on your role, on the member of the board, managing director. I want to understand the strategy behind of GIZ. Right? What are you doing and why you're doing supporting sustainable finance in general? And taxonomy is only one of them. And of course, the mapper, how this fit into the broader strategy. Mr. Hoven.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And perhaps I would like to frame it differently. GIZ has a very strong portfolio in the climate, in the energy, and the mobility arena, and also including climate adaptation. It's more than 40% of our doing. So we have been very much engaged for many, many decades also in the climate process. And we know how important it is really to accelerate climate action, because we see the impact of the climate crisis really on the ground when we work together with partner countries. But when you look into the numbers, and we know that we, of course, have to mobilize more public funding, but we need to mobilize much more in the private sector, internationally, but also domestically. So this is about the trillions. So how are you going to do this? And we need this funding in order to accelerate action. And when you look into the numbers about international capital flows, you see, wow, no? So this is mainly between industrialized countries and perhaps a handful of emerging economies still gain something, no? Perhaps China and Brazil. But if you take them out, what is being left, for instance, for countries like in Africa, that also have to undergo a decarbonization process and a huge adaptation process, little is being left. So I consider taxonomies, and this sounds so technical, really like as a game changer, as a facilitator, as a mobilizer of additional funding and engagement. And sometimes when we speak about numbers, and you mentioned 70 taxonomies already, and I said, wow, I thought, well, this is great work. And this is so difficult to achieve, quite frankly, because when you look back, when in the climate process, international community started to define how CO2 mitigation is being measured. We invested years into the statistical monitoring capacities of the institutions worldwide. This came out of the climate finance, really to make it happen, to make numbers comparable, to have sufficient transparency in place. And when you look back, I think that now what is happening with the taxonomy roadmap is actually bringing the financial sector completely into this arena. which has been dominated by other types of measuring and statistics. So this is absolutely core and center to accelerate climate action. Well, on the ground, you mentioned the Thailand experience. What is important? Let me say that, of course, I would underline, of course, transparency. The mapper is a tool that would facilitate access by our partners in the Global South to what is available. And they could actually perhaps also copy and paste if doable. No? So they don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is quite important. But we should be conscious about the following fact. In many countries, if we face very weak institutions that deal with sustainable finance. It's not comparable with Brazil, or it's not comparable with a European country. And there normally, when we go into this sector, and we have a huge portfolio on domestic resource mobilization, SME promotion, financial promotion of startups, etc. We really look at what is available, how is the institutional setup, and where are the deficiencies, and what would be a first actually entry point to really mobilize the funding that is being needed. So I would say concentration on taxonomies, especially when it comes to this overarching exercise, absolutely core and center, and you can count on the continuous German and GIZ support. But when it comes down to the local level, we should really consider a more comprehensive approach and look into the institutional setups to make sure that we find the right mix between ambition and doability, I would call it, not interoperability, but also doability, always, of course, considering what the financial markets, what they require as a minimum standards in this respect. This is what I would take from our lessons learned so far.
That's great. Can you say a few words about the mapper?
Yeah, the mapper is actually, it's an open source data source that we established, and yeah, so it is accessible, and you can actually draw the information that you need on different taxonomies. Where do you find what kind of taxonomies? What have you to consider, obey upon, and yeah, and I think this should actually help us to guide also a little bit, or help the financial sector perhaps to maneuver more quickly through this forest of taxonomies. Let's call it like this. I don't want to call it a tropical forest, but it's, yeah, I mean, on one hand, one can understand, as this has been a longer process, that you have perhaps very specific taxonomies. But certainly, as we move ahead, and the more financing we want to mobilize, of course, the more alignment we get through some kind of overarching taxonomy, or as you say, super taxonomy, interoperability. I think the better, I think, for many countries. No? So, but I would think that this now the road to take, and hopefully countries would agree to pursue this avenue.
Absolutely. I think you're, again, from your perspective, look at taxonomy as fundamental tool, but look at more broader in terms of institution capacity and usability, also durability. So basically, eventually, it's about to use them to help with either financial flows and overall economic development. So that's super important. And also you emphasize very important though that I think that what, Sean, 13 years ago, I have the first taxonomy. It's tremendous progress made. So we have to, as you said, we should not let the perfection to be the enemy of progress. We celebrate really zero to hero moment in the last 10 years or so. So, but the road ahead is still challenging. So I want next round of question talk about the future. And all of you mentioned the importance of collaboration, working together now. And I want to kind of dig into a little bit more concrete actions. What kind of collective action we want really tag on with some urgency? Looking at our colors, I think that's sending, it's not green, but a sending of urgency, the signal of urgency. So I'll start with Cristina. What do you think, the kind of focusing on collective action we can take together?
Thank you, Ron. So first, I would like to say that Brazil is supporting the Taxonomy Roadmap initiative together with the IFC, UNDP, SBFN, and the Azerbaijan's government. This is very important to promote this conversation about how to align, to harmonize, to make the interoperability among taxonomies. I also would like to say that we are very happy to join the Global Mapper. I think this tool is very important to make it concrete, to show to the stakeholders in general how the taxonomies interact, let's say, and also the other initiatives, bilateral or that can get more plural, such as the Common Ground taxonomy. I think Brazil has just asked to enter in this initiative together with Europe and China and Singapore. So I think those three things that have different natures could work together and bring the synergies in order to make this interoperability true. CBI is working on this for a long while. Many governments, the JZ has this experience, IFC as well. So I would like also to thank all the technical supporters of the Brazilian taxonomy, GIZ, and the UNEP-FI. They are working with us, and we hired consultants such as the CBI consultants and many Brazilian experts as well, because the way to reconcile both the national perspective and the international perspective is to look into the national structure, how it works, what are the main objectives, and not only about mitigation or adaptation, also the other environmental goals and the other social goals, with the way that the other countries are doing. So if we can find this balance that respects the sovereignty of each country and each country's own development choices, I think we are ready to cooperate. And this is not a dream, this is possible, and some concrete methodologies may help us on that. So I really believe in this way.
Fantastic. I think you already map out some low-hanging fruit. It's in development. So the roadmap is launched, and the partnership is growing. And this is not taxonomy. It's a roadmap to bring people together to have a shared objective and also propose some concrete technical action around some key pillars. And you mentioned the mapper already. The key partners are all here. And then the common ground taxonomy, it is a taxonomy. So I think that really complementary together. And I think you also bring very important points. When we talk about interoperability, we're not talking about there will be a one taxonomy. It's very important that we look at the possibility of alignment and comparability, but also respect the country are different. And actually that brings the diversity and the reality of on the ground. Very, very important. With that, I may ask Peter, your reflection of the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And also, I think some very interesting ideas we just heard. I fully agree that somehow we have to respect that all countries have their starting points and their own national context. So indeed, having taxonomies doesn't mean we all have to go for one single model, but rather ensuring that whatever we have in our respective jurisdictions can then speak to the other frameworks around the world. And as they say, it takes two to tango. I think it takes way more than two to make taxonomies interoperable. And therefore, I think that initiatives like the roadmap are really very, very valuable because they somehow bring so many relevant partners around the table, and we are able to discuss the common, let's say, approaches or principles that we do in our respective jurisdictions. So in this sense, we would be very keen to see this roadmap initiative to continue looking ahead. From a more EU perspective, what we are doing now with the Sustainable Finance Advisory Hub, we are really looking forward to let's say, the next stages where we'll be expanding the scope of activities that we'll be supporting, including to accompany the rollout of the Global Green Bond Initiative. Then also onboarding other implementing partners under the hub. And maybe last point that I would echo again, this global taxonomy mapper. Indeed, it's a tool that can help us somehow make information better available and easier to reach for those who need it. So in this sense, this is something very important. And so the more jurisdictions will enter the mapper initiative, the better for its purpose. And ultimately, our goal, as Sean mentioned at the beginning, is really to ensure that the capital flows then follow the framework. So in a sense, what we are doing is a means to reaching the end of actually funding sustainability transition around the world. So
that's great.
That will be our measure of success.
That's fantastic. You talk about the action you can take. You have a platform, you have a partner. So there's so much you can do, particularly, I think, capacity building. Mr. Hoven.
What lies ahead of us? I think first, we think that the Taxonomy Roadmap Initiative is really absolutely crucial for the future of many, many countries. So, and it's wonderful that Brazil is going to join us. So we need more members, we need more supporters. This is the first. When I look into the future, this would be one level of ambition. Secondly, we have spoken about the 70 countries that now actually are in a position of having their own taxonomies. Well, still a way to go. And I think this is the second point in our future endeavors, really to bring additional countries on board. Peru, Mexico have already been raised, so crucial countries that could really mobilize more funding. Thirdly, support the alignment process in a suitable way. And fourthly, I think this should be underlined and recognized, is actually when you build a taxonomy, it's not only, of course, you have to have the capacity also in the country to make it happen, but it's an inclusive process. You can't do this top-down just in one ministry alone. If you want to be successful, what it requires, and this is due to our own experience in Germany, you need a multi-stakeholder approach to really find the right solution, to find this societal balance and the agreement and the consensus. If this has been done properly, then you really can kick off a lot of investments. So, and we would certainly, as GIZ, where we help countries, we would place a specific emphasis on the process, on this inclusivity in the processes, to make sure that if the taxonomy is ready, that actually it's also be broadly accepted at the national level.
That's a very important point in terms of the multi-agency collaboration on the ground and multi-stakeholder altogether. So it's multi-dimension of the collaboration, and that's very important. And I know we have 3 minutes, but Sean, I want you to conclude on the panel, but maybe leave 1 minute for the audience to have one question with this solution talk with so cozy setup. Sean.
Science underpins what we need to do around climate and what the taxonomy is trying to distill. At the end of the day, the taxonomy in Europe, the common ground taxonomy, the work between countries is about sharing the science, listening to the science for a change, rather than ignoring it for 30 years, which is why we've got in such a disastrous position. So sharing the science among countries, and not just the science on emissions reductions, it's also the science on all the things that will make us more resilient in the face of climate change. That's social, that's nature, that's economic resilience as well. We have a lot of evidence out there. We need to marshal it, and we need to share that amongst different sort of countries, especially as now the US science community is being decimated. There's more pressure on the rest of us to share. We're doing that with buildings, transport, water, energy. We now need to do it on social, nature, the SDGs, which need to be understood as a means of making our societies more resilient in the face of climate volatility. The second area of collaboration is recognition through science, but also understanding. Brazil's done a great job of bringing in agricultural criteria. Europe hasn't done that yet. There needs to be discussion about how we can recognise investments that are made in Brazil that are resilient, that are sustainable, for the purposes of investors in Europe and so on. And then the third area is collaboration on incentives and support, because that's how we get things happening really quickly. Green budgeting in Europe is starting that. The development finance institutions, we've got a partnership with the IFC, promoting resilient investments around the world and transition investments. All of these things got to come together. Taxonomy binds everything. That's the opportunity.
That's the opportunity. I don't think I have too much time, but I want to say it's great. Science-based recognition, we talk about mutual recognition, very important, and also incentive. Taxonomy is along. There's an ecosystem around the taxonomy to make it work. And so with that, I think our message is very clear. Progress made, challenge remain. Only we can success, we work together. Thank you very much. And please join me to thank the panelists for the great discussion and all of you for your participation.
Thank you.